All right, welcome back, Powers on Sports Podcast. Next up, the only person, non-player that I know that has a Super Bowl ring. The one and only man who's also got the distinction of the only man to cover a Super Bowl with next to nobody in the building. So we're
That
going to
you
get
know. Right.
that I know. So we're going to get some great perspective. Mr. TJ Rives, Buccaneer Radio Network, also host of the College Basketball Coast to Coast podcast, which we are in the heart of college basketball season. Also does some great work for Bet US TV and just an all around and was on the losing end of his daughter's
Oh,
district final district basketball tournament event here this
yeah.
week. Mr. Rives, welcome in, sir.
Good to be with you. Yes, that was a tough loss. Again, the Twins are JV players, but for the varsity, the season came to an end for their 5 seniors. And see, I was kind of conflicted. I know we're just digressing for a second because they lost to my high school from South Tampa, Plant High School, very, very prominent, very known high school. And so Plant beat George M. Steinbrenner High School, where my Twins go now in the North County, and knocked them out of the state, the district playoffs, and even make it into the state playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, but it's that time of year. And as I was saying to the Twins, for everybody, your season comes to an end, usually with a defeat. Only one team at the very end gets to celebrate all the victories. Now, sure, you would like to win some playoff games, but welcome to what's coming with March with college basketball and now with pro football. And I know you're going to go there first. We're down to the final game. There's only one team Sunday night in Las Vegas that gets to celebrate, hold up the trophy, maybe kiss Taylor Swift, whatever else is going to happen there for Kansas City if they win. I don't know for the 49ers, it's been so long. Do they remember how to celebrate a Super Bowl
30
win?
years, 30.
It's been a while. So I know we're going to get into that. It's good to be with you on all fronts, my friend.
Interesting note that I didn't know till about a week ago. I didn't realize the turf in Las Vegas is going to be grass and not turf.
Yes.
I know
Yes.
if you follow the Raiders, they play on turf during the regular season, but the NFL is putting grass on top of the turf at Allegiant Stadium on Sunday. And we've obviously, if you've been keeping up, the 49ers have not been very happy with their practice facility turf during the week. How do you think? Do you think that has any play at all as far as the turf versus the grass at Allegiant Stadium, which you've been at?
Yeah, that's amazing that they're doing it. But again, they have experts and they spend millions and millions of dollars with the technology and to understand all of this. But when they did it, I guess at UNLV, it had a problem. It had a very sponge effect. And so you're messing with the team's preparation midweek as we're doing this show. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, sometimes the field can be controversial on whether the field's in great shape. You don't want that to be a factor. And bear in mind, they've played on field turf in numerous ones of these recent Super Bowls. When they played in Minnesota,
Jerry
when they
World,
played in Jerry's World, when they played in Houston, when they've played in Atlanta, all of those are field turf. So maybe this is a players association thing too, where, hey, they want the grass, not only for the better surface, but to take care of player safety, et cetera, et cetera. So that is an interesting aspect. There's so many different parts of this game and aspects to this game. Super Bowl rematch, Mahomes' legacy. 49ers haven't won it since Bill Clinton had just been elected back in the 90s. I mean, take your pick on which avenue you want to travel there with those.
Well, we're going to do a tail of the tape here in just a couple of minutes. Before we get to that, though, I want you to give me, if you're one of the rare guys I know that have actually been on the field in a Super Bowl, a couple different opportunities. Give me a memory, especially Wednesday was the anniversary of the Super Bowl. The Bucs most recently won the 4-year Super Bowl anniversary of the very few people in the stadium and
That's
COVID
right.
and all that stuff. Give the audience a little perspective of what
that one
was like.
That one was crazy. That's the freshest one. That's the most recent one with Tom Brady and the COVID-19 year of 2020. And it is still surreal to this. I mean, I'm looking in my office while we're talking at a picture of me in the mask with the confetti and the fireworks going off, and it still doesn't seem that all of that really happened and was real because it was so bizarre that whole year. But I'll come back to that story in a second because the first story kind of ties into the second story. So The second Super Bowl win for the Buccaneers was obviously at home at Raymond James Stadium. So you go back 21 years ago when the Buccaneers defeated the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC Championship game. That Super Bowl in San Diego, California, where they had rotated the Super Bowl numerous times in the 1980s and the 90s. All right. And so this was 2003, January of 2003. And so in my work duties, I'm doing 5-day-a-week sports radio in the Tampa Bay area. I'm also the voice of USF's men's basketball team, which is playing in season that January. And I'm also one of the side duties. I am the pregame host on Buccaneers radio, on the Buccaneer Radio Network. That's the station where I was working. We were the flagship station, et cetera. So I have all worlds, Jason, converging here for Super Bowl weekend. And so the Bulls, the USF Bulls, the South Florida Bulls, who we're going to touch on a little later on in this conversation, that are having a tremendous college basketball run, they're playing in Greenville, North Carolina against ECU, East Carolina, on the Saturday night before the Super Bowl. Now, geographically, folks, I know it's a podcast and audio. You can't get much farther away on the same continent than Greenville, North Carolina, and San Diego, California. I mean, yes, if you went from Miami to Boston, or if you went from Miami to Seattle, or San Diego to Boston, that's pretty far away on the same continent. But this is pretty far away. So this is a night game at ECU. Seth Greenberg, who you see all the time on ESPN now, all their coverage, their college game day, their primetime games, he's the coach. This is a double overtime conference game, double overtime, Saturday night, runs late into the night. Seth Greenberg gets thrown out of the game. I believe that is the only time in his South Florida career he ever got ejected. He got ejected on the night before the Super Bowl. So he gets thrown out. The Bulls lose the game. I now have to drive with a colleague 90 minutes to Raleigh, back to the west to Raleigh, North Carolina, because there's an early morning Raleigh to Atlanta flight on Delta where I can still get to San Diego. If I had stayed in Greenville, North Carolina, there's no way to get to a hub, Charlotte or Atlanta, to get to San Diego the day of the Super Bowl.
You're dead.
You're dead on the travel. All right. So I get to Raleigh in the middle of the night, get like 2 hours sleep, get to the Raleigh airport, get on the plane, get to Atlanta, and get on the Atlanta to San Diego flight. And I notify my Buccaneer boss and the Buccaneer people, I'm on the Atlanta flight, I'm coming. So we get to San Diego roughly around 2:30 Eastern time, about 4 hours before kickoff. Now, I have a couple of complications. Number one, I haven't gotten to the stadium yet, but most importantly, number two, I got to go get the credential to get into the game. So I go to downtown San Diego to the convention center, and I've told this story all the time, and I tell it here on the Powers on Sports podcast. I got a standing ovation at Super Bowl 37. You know how I got a standing ovation? Because when I got into that credential center, after I got my bags, I got in a cab, I got down to the convention center. It's now probably 3:15 Eastern time, 12:15 local time. It's now about 3 hours before kickoff. When I walk in, the woman immediately says to me, looking at me, she goes, "Are you TJ from the Buccaneers?" I mean, not even hello, not even, what are you doing here? It's, "Are you TJ from the Buccaneers?" And I say, yes. And 4 people stand up immediately doing this. I get a standing ovation because I am the last credential of Super Bowl 37. Once they make my media credential with my picture, Jason, they can leave. They're gone. Hallelujah. The mayhem of 1,000+ people being credentialed for the Super Bowl for the past few days is over. Because TJ has shown up. So I show up. I get my credential after my standing ovation. I now have to get out to the stadium with my bags. I get out there, and you talk about, this is post 9/11 now, a couple of years after 9/11.
Mayhem, more mayhem.
It was like the military war zone. There was a checkpoint about a quarter of a mile from the stadium that took about 20 minutes to get through that checkpoint for the bus. People coming on the bus with the bomb dog, the German Shepherd, the whole bit. Then we have to get up by the stadium, get off the bus, get through the security. Long story short, I get in the stadium, and the Buccaneers have an amazing night after being a punchline, a punching bag for so many years. They pummel the Raiders. I still remember, Jason, 21 years later, how many more Raider fans than there were than Buck fans. There were probably about 65
Oh,
Raider fans.
oh yeah.
Probably out of the 70,000 or so in the stadium, easily 45,000 of it was Raider fans. And the Bucs just put it on them. Second quarter, third
Mhm.
quarter, interception return for a touchdown. After interception return for a touchdown, I still vividly remember Derek Brooks picking that last ball off, coming right at where we were. We were in the end zone. The media overflow was in that end zone that he was running towards and pointing
Yep.
to clinch it. What a moment. All right, so that is 21 years ago where I got the standing O. That was San Diego, California. It took a full day the next day to get back to Tampa Bay, through Los Angeles, through Dallas, had to drive the I-5 up to LA to get the return flight through Dallas, back to Tampa. Didn't get back until like almost midnight on Monday night. All right, so that ties into Super Bowl 55. So now you have the pandemic crazy season, and the Buccaneers are the first team to ever play in their own stadium hosting the Super Bowl. So just with what I just told you, I got in my car in the North Tampa suburb of Lutz and drove 20 minutes to the Super Bowl the second time around, not the Greenville to Atlanta to San Diego and the standing ovation. And then the remembrances that I have of that game over the Chiefs, the first thing is, as you mentioned, limited fans because of the COVID concerns. So they had limited with social distancing. They had begun to vaccinate doctors and healthcare workers, and they allowed several thousand of them on tickets to come into the game. I am not allowed on the field to do my sideline duty. I'm only allowed, as we had done that entire year, in the front row of Raymond James Stadium. So I have about a 15-yard space in the front row where I'm allowed to walk back and forth, and that's it. I'm restricted there. Then they had another probably 30-yard space for Tracy Wolfson of CBS, who was on my
Right.
sideline, to stand in the middle. And then the Westwood One reporter, who was Laura Oakman of Westwood
Right.
One, she had another 15 to 20 yards down at the far end of the field. And we were the only ones that were allowed to walk back and forth in that front row with masks on, by the way, and the whole bit. So I often say that was a crazy, surreal season. Just fundamentally, Tom Brady leaving the Patriots and coming to the Buccaneers is crazy enough. And then the Bucs have put together a win streak, gotten into the Super Bowl, and they're playing in their own stadium. And so, as I shared on previous conversations, I think I've shared this with you. The only time I really had a moment, Jason Powers, of what is truly going on here is when Brady threw the second touchdown to Rob Gronkowski late in the first half, right in front of me in the Buccaneer painted end zone that was red, Buccaneers. I stood there going, with the Bucs celebrating in front of me, is this really happening? Am I really watching Tom Brady throw to Rob Gronkowski in Raymond James Stadium in the Super Bowl? It
As
was
Buccaneers.
as Buccaneers, not as New England Patriots. Yes, they're Bucs in the Buccaneer end zone in the Buccaneer Stadium. So that was the only time I really had that kind of, please somebody tell me, is this real life after all we had been through? So anyway, that was a crazy night. And then just the follow-up story after that is over with. Now the pseudo restrictions are lifted, I guess. So I worked my way down the front row to the far end of the stadium, the north end of the stadium, where they had done the trophy celebration with the Lombardi trophy, up on the stage with CBS. I'm now down at that end of the stadium, and we have a long boom microphone, which we can stretch out, and I can interview a couple of players and talk to them about winning the Super Bowl. That's the first time I had seen physically Lavonte David and Leonard Fournette and Cameron Brate, who I was talking to. Lavonte David said, "Man, it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you all year. We were forbidden from being around them.
Right.
Locker room, game day, anything." So then I take away one other thing. Tom Brady came down around that area where we were. He was talking to national radio with Westwood One. He was talking to the NFL Network on TV. So Jason, this is like an hour after Super Bowl 55 in Tampa. We're probably 45 minutes after the game at least. They've done the celebration. CBS is now off the air. The players are all around us. The confetti's all over the field. And I get done with the Buccaneer radio conversation. I look around. I'm like, my God, there are still a lot of people here celebrating the Super Bowl. I look around Raymond James Stadium. And then I double take. It's all the cardboard cutouts. There's 1,000 cardboard cutouts, and I thought it was people. I'm still having a moment. I'm like, man, there's a lot of people left an hour after the game. That's never happened. And it's because it's the cardboard cutouts that sat there, and the cardboard cutouts actually sat there for like another 2 days. It's bizarre before they finally came and cleaned it up, all the cutouts of the fans. So I know I gave you a ton there on the simple questions of Buccaneers Super Bowls, but obviously for those reasons, my friend, I will never forget either one of those. Even if I had to go all the way to San Diego for one of them and take a full day to get back from San Diego. And then in the second one, it kind of balanced out because long about midnight Eastern time, I got in my car and drove back 20 minutes to my house in Lutz, kissed my wife, and had a nice good night's sleep in the house after the Super Bowl. 20-minute car ride earlier. It was crazy. And I hope I did it justice with telling those stories on the Powers on Sports podcast.
Well, you were part of history of a scenario that will probably never happen again, honestly, in the world of the Super Bowl, as far as the limited access and all that stuff.
Well,
And
how about this? I still tell this story for what we do in broadcasting to pull the curtain back. We did every game at Raymond James Stadium that year because of the COVID restrictions. We were not traveling. So we did all of the road games on TV, including the 3 road playoff games with Washington, New Orleans, and Green Bay. We did those sitting in the Raymond James Stadium control room, calling them off TV with Gene Deckerhoff, Dave Moore calling the game, me adding in, pregame, halftime, whatever. I can't be the sideline guy if I'm not at the game. I was just kind of adding in things that I had observed, stuff that we were watching. And so then we get to Super Bowl 55 and it's at home. Now I know we have since gone to a 17th game in the season. So it is now possible that somebody could break the record of 17 regular season games, 3 playoff games, and the Super Bowl in the same stadium. They could break it, but I don't think it's likely. What's more than likely for all time is the Buccaneer Radio Network crew did all 20 games out of Raymond James Stadium that year, including Super Bowl 55. Pretty crazy, nutty 2020 year, my friend.
And by the way, he's got a very nice Super Bowl ring to match that too. I've seen that
and the hat,
times.
and the ring, and the whole
right.
bit. And the Twins, by the way, are still arguing over who gets the Super Bowl ring because it has both their names on it, Rives. So who knows what happens down the road? But yeah, it's a fun memento. I'm not a big jewelry guy. You know that. You've been around me. I don't roll like Jason Powers and Peter Blake and Paul Stewart and all you guys with your crusted diamond hang tag chain and all that stuff and all your no, I'm not a big jewelry guy, but I do have a Super Bowl 55 ring that is crazy to show off and tell the story. Just like I told you, and for all time, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs came to Tampa, and the only touchdown they got was when their plane landed because they didn't get a touchdown in the game, brother.
And my only Super Bowl memory that I'll give a quick story of is I was, as a high school senior here in Tampa, I'd worked at the old Tampa Stadium couple of years selling sodas in the stadium, going up and down the old sombrero back in the day in the heat,
the aluminum seats, the aluminum back seats.
Yep. I got an opportunity to work the 1991 Super Bowl, the famous Whitney Houston Super Bowl national anthem.
Yes.
Desert Storm Super Bowl, talking about the military. You talk about the security. That was the first year where security was at a heightened level because of the Desert Storm, the Gulf War, and all that stuff.
It had just started. It had just started a couple of weeks earlier, or 3 weeks earlier.
So I had to go through all that security and all that good stuff, and obviously the famous Whitney Houston national anthem and the flyover, because MacDill Air Force Base is 15 minutes down the road here in Tampa, and kind of the CENTCOM Central Command area here in Tampa is a big military installation. So that was kind of my
how many trips up and down the aisles do you recall making? 3, 5, 7 with all the
3 or
Cokes
5.
and the beers?
Like 25. I mean,
25.
you're up and down the stadium lugging, and back in the day, you're lugging these metal things with 20 or 25 Cokes in each rack that you're selling to the people in the stands, which doesn't happen today. You go to the concession area today, but back in the day, people like me used to go up and down Tampa Stadium. Hey, you need a soda in row 27? How many? And you'd send it down the road.
Exactly right.
Down, 25
and they would pass the cash back, and they'd pass the cash back to you.
no debit cards, none of it was straight cash, homie, and all that good stuff. So that was my
You were
my
there for the Giants win and the famous Scott Norwood
Scott.
wide
Yep,
right of the Bills, and that was the best chance the Bills had to win of those 4 Super Bowls. Bad memories
that's
for
it.
them because the next 3 they were never close really in any of those.
That's it.
Uh, Amazing that they got there, but yeah, you were there. You were there that night, and I often like to say of that nugget, what a great moment for Tampa, and that was the second time the Super Bowl had been in Tampa. It has now been in Tampa 3 more times since, 5 times total for the Super Bowl being played here. That Whitney Houston and the Florida Orchestra were playing that, the Florida Orchestra playing that national anthem. But in that case, they were playing away. She was singing away, but it was a tape that was playing out over the PA and out on ABC worldwide in the Super Bowl on ABC's television network. A little known fact: they didn't want a chance that there was some kind of a mistake, something that would happen. So they were there. They were playing their instrument. She was singing. How However, it was a tape, from what I was told by the organizers and everybody involved, and the NFL later confirmed that yes, that's exactly because they had taped it, I believe, the night before or maybe on the Friday night before that game, and they loved the tape so much about how awesome she was, and they wanted to make sure there were no mistakes on Sunday, that something didn't happen. So what a moment and what Super Bowl memories, and let's hope we get something like that out of Las Vegas with Mahomes and the Chiefs and the 49ers. We'll see, my friend.
Well, let's get to the game itself. Let's do a little quick tale of the tape of the game. Obviously, everybody, obviously Kansas City comes in as about a point and a half underdog. If you look at this game, TJ, 6 weeks ago, everybody would have said San Francisco's clearing above the best team in the league. They were rolling, Purdy, that offense. Kansas City was the one that was struggling. They couldn't find offense. Their receivers were having all kind of problems. And it's amazing how 6 weeks later, most everybody that I've seen on TV and the pundits, they think Kansas City's going to win the game, and San Francisco's kind of the underdog, even though San Francisco's the favorite.
It is interesting. I do like the 49ers here. I like this something like 27-24, something along those lines. I think it is their time. So many weapons for Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, a big X factor. And I think San Francisco's defense will be ready to go. That's how that Buccaneer team was able to win in Super Bowl 55. And you look at the lumps that the Chiefs have taken postseason, or, I mean, obviously they won the whole thing last year, or in the regular season this year. It's physical defenses. Kelsey's going to get his on the tail of the tape.
Yeah.
But I think San Francisco will find a way with the pass rush, with disturbing Mahomes. I like the 49ers in this Super Bowl, just when you come down to it, and 2 historic franchises. But again, it's been a long drought for San Francisco. Now, if Kansas City can get this, and it's 3 Super Bowl wins for Patrick Mahomes in 5 seasons, that's pretty incredible. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think ultimately the amazing story of Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy, the amazing resurgence as Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have built this over the last few years to finally lead to this moment. And don't think for a second this is not a big moment for Kyle Shanahan, because they blew a 10-point lead from pressure against Kansas City in the last Super Bowl, and he is the offensive coordinator that would not run the ball when they're up 28-3 on the New England Patriots, while coaching for the Atlanta Falcons as the offensive coordinator. So there is a lot of pressure and a lot of scrutiny on him. I think they will cast that aside. I think they will find a way come Sunday night.
And again, if you look back in the playoff run here, if you look back to that Buffalo game against Kansas City, Buffalo controlled the game with the running game, and they were able to have long drives. I think San Francisco is going to be very much a similar situation. We know Shanahan's a great orchestrator of the running game with McCaffrey. I think you're going to get a lot of carries out of McCaffrey, a lot of touches. And that offensive line for San Francisco against the defensive line, sneaky injury. Omenahu for the pass rusher for the Chiefs hurt his knee in the championship game. Not going to play.
Good. He's out.
He's the one that strip sacked Lamar Jackson in that championship game. I think that's going to be a factor. And a guy well, can Donovan Smith block Chase Young and/or Nick Bosa? I think that's going to be a key. They've had issues with the tackles. Jawan Taylor's had penalty issues. Donovan Smith's had some issues. Can that offensive line for Kansas City hold up? No Joe Thuney, who's going to be out for Kansas City, the guard. Can the defensive line of San Francisco implore its physical will and they were called out after the championship game for lack of effort. There were some glaring plays on film where they were just not hustling very much against Detroit. And here's the other thing about this game that I think is important. San Francisco's played C games in both games and won. Kansas City's played A games and they've won. In my view, if San Francisco can play a B plus game, I think they're just better than Kansas City from 1 to 53.
All right. Yeah, I agree with you that Donovan Smith's a key figure in this, former left tackle protecting Tom Brady in that Super Bowl. Can Nick Bosa have a big game? And I really think, to your point about the formula, Baltimore didn't try to run the ball. And I think San Francisco will be able to run the ball some on Kansas City with McCaffrey, and he's such a weapon out of the backfield. So going to be a lot of mojo, and it'll be interesting. Is it going to be there's a lot of belief that it's going to be mostly 49er fans in the West because there's so many of them in the proximity to Vegas.
Right.
Kansas City's been playing in Las Vegas against the Raiders several times. So it'll be interesting. What's the stadium makeup? Is it 50-50? Will it be louder for the 49ers? We're going to find out. We're going to find out for this one on Sunday, my friend.
And I'm with you. I like the 49ers. I think everybody's kind of sleeping on them a little bit. I like the 49ers. Give me a prop play. You got a prop that you like?
How about Christian McCaffrey first touchdown of the game? I love that because everybody keeps honing in on the Chiefs get the ball, they go right down the field and score. McCaffrey first touchdown of the game. I've got a buddy, and I'll wrap it real quick because I know you want to talk a couple of quick other things. I got a buddy who's a former, now retired nuclear engineer. He is a hilarious handicapper, and he loves a couple of different prop bets. One of every Super Bowl, he plays these. One of them is neither team will score 3 in a row.
Right.
And that excludes the extra point. There will not be a situation where Kansas City or the 49ers score 3 times in a row. However they do it. Touchdowns, 3 field goals in a row.
Safety, whatever.
Yeah. He has won with that over and over over again. It wins at like an over 70% clip. It won last year because neither the Chiefs or the Eagles scored 3 times in a row. Again, extra points are excluded in this. And another one that he loves is the longest touchdown of the game, or the shortest touchdown of the game, is over 1.5 yards.
Right.
He doesn't want a 1-yard goal line touchdown. And I'm kind of iffy on that one, but he loves, and he wins more often than not on shortest touchdown of the game over 1.5 yards outside the 1-yard line. So there's just a couple of obscure props that I'll just throw out there for you.
And one that I saw that I like in this era of analytics, both teams will convert at least 1 4th down.
Yes.
Both teams.
Probably, yes.
3 to 1. You get 3 to 1 on your money for that, too. Somewhere around 3 to 1 on your money. But both teams have to convert at least 1 4th down conversion. And obviously, with this day and age of going for it and all that stuff, I think that's a pretty good one as well. I think both teams will go for it at least once and make it. So, all right, let's transition. Listen to Powers on Sports Podcast. TJ Rives, Buccaneer Radio. He also hosts the College Basketball Coast to Coast podcast, which is getting into full swing here in mid-February as we approach mid-February, the stretch run of the regular season. TJ's doing a lot of stuff daily with BetUS TV, college basketball show, gambling, all that good stuff. So if you get you gamblers out there, go to BetUS TV.
You degenerates, yes.
You can bet on Quinnipiac, all the way from Quinnipiac to Houston to Kent State and everybody in between.
St. Mary's to Minnesota to Texas Southern, exactly. You got it.
With about 3 weeks left in the regular season or so, 3.5 weeks or so, give me a general theme of the college basketball season so far through
Have we said this like the last couple of years? And you do a great job, by the way, helping me out on college basketball coast to coast. My general theme is we are sitting here in mid-February, and you can make the argument for about 8 teams at the moment that can win the whole thing. I mean, if I go down the list of Purdue and Houston and North Carolina and UConn, the defending champions, and I keep going down that list. If Kentucky gets it together, Duke, Kansas, you can make the argument. And San Diego State's got a lot of their players back, by the way, and they were in the national title game. Florida Atlantic's got their guards back and a couple of other pieces back. You can make the argument, I believe, for probably about 15 teams to be in the Final Four, maybe more. And I can make the argument for about 7 or 8 to win it. So wide open right now. And I don't know if that's a bad thing. Wide open is the overall theme that I have right now on the college basketball season. And we are loving watching all of these different matchups in the conferences, and they start to build. The drama and the excitement will build to March. There is no doubt, my friend.
Couple of off the radar teams that, yeah, again, one's here close to us. Couple teams that have come out of nowhere with just tremendous turnarounds, new coach, new operation this year. Give me a couple teams. I'm going to tee up with one here locally. USF is on a huge winning streak. Amir Abdul-Rahim came from Kennesaw State. They have won 9 consecutive conference games, something that program has never done. And they've had some good years they've had some good teams over the years. Give me a thought or two about USF and a couple of the teams that are maybe off the radar.
Incredible story, just in that, and you've said this too. They were not expected. They were picked 9th in the American Conference. Abdul-Rahim is the younger brother of Sharif Abdul-Rahim, the former NBA All-Star, who now, by the way, is the commissioner of the NBA G League. He runs the operations of the NBA G League, the older brother. This is the younger brother who was in the NCAA tournament with Kennesaw State, another northern suburb school out of Atlanta. So now he comes in here, and they have put it together. 14 wins in the last 15 games at the time we're taping. They're playing a bad Rice team on Sunday. They're playing another iffy bad team in Tulsa. They are liable to be 11-1 when they play Florida Atlantic a week from Sunday at home. What a game that's going to be on the campus of USF in Tampa at the Yuengling Center. Great job. He's got a guard in Chris Youngblood that can score. He's got a big kid at 6'10", lanky, long, named Kason Pryor, who's been a bit of a revelation. Again, the Bulls have not had a sniff of the NCAA tournament since 2012. What a great story. A tease that on the College Basketball Coast to Coast show and podcast, a brother podcast of this one, it's going to be out Thursday into Friday, previewing the weekend. Jim Lighthall, the 27-year radio man for USF, is on the podcast talking further about South Florida, USF in the American Conference with Florida Atlantic, Memphis, North Texas, UAB, Charlotte. Where does USF rank? How are they doing? Why are they rising to the level? So Jim is on with me on College Basketball Coast to Coast. We're programming with live shows, etc., but he's going to be on the podcast talking about that. And a couple of other teams. South Carolina. I know we keep talking on the coverage about South Carolina in the SEC, a win over Kentucky at home. They go to Tennessee and win. They go to Georgia and win.
Right.
In the recent. Lamont Paris is the coach, the former Chattanooga coach. They have had a resurgence. They have not been in the NCAA tournament since 2017 when they went to the Final Four, by the way, with Frank Martin. They have not been in the NCAA tournament since then, by the way. So South Carolina coming on in a very feisty SEC. Keep an eye on them. It's a lot of fun to see what they are up to. And I know you didn't ask me this, but the Big 12.
I was going to say that.
Lord, what a conference. That's
the
best conference.
1 to 10, the best conference in the country. From 1 to 10, best conference in the country.
Right. And right now they have, because they added the 4, it's 14. It's 1 to 14. They very easily are going to get 10 teams in, and they may get an 11th team in out of the same league with the likes of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas are leaving the league. But you add Houston and BYU and UCF out of Orlando and Cincinnati. All 4 of those new teams may get in the NCAA tournament. Big 12 loaded. Baylor, Texas Tech, Iowa State. It is a loaded.
Kansas State just beat Kansas Monday night.
Yes.
Yep. Really good.
Iowa State goes and wins at Texas the other night. BYU, UCF has won a couple of games with Kansas and Oklahoma at home. So that Big 12 is just knockdown, drag out, and it's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of fun in the college hoops.
Give me 2 names on the coaching hot seat. Give me 2 coaches that might be in some trouble. Villanova, maybe?
I don't know if Kyle Neptune is in that much trouble. It's only his second year. They are struggling. They did get a win midweek here that will help their cause. You got to look at Mike Woodson at Indiana. I know they won a midweek game with Ohio State. You're a former grad student at Indiana. They have a bigger expectation than just being middle of the pack in the Big Ten and not ever making it out of the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. Woodson's 3rd year. Is there progress? I don't know. I don't think my guy Penny Hardaway is in trouble at Memphis, but they're clearly struggling. They were in the top 10 3 weeks ago and have now taken 4 losses since then that have knocked them way down on the NCAA tournament bubble. I don't think Penny is that much on the hot seat, but we'll see. And I know you keep pointing out, and we got to go in a second, John Calipari. Is the Kentucky fan base fed up with him?
Just stale.
Is it stale? I mean, they're still an exciting, explosive
Yeah.
team. And if
Yeah.
they put it together in March and win the SEC tournament and win a game in the NCAA tournament, how do you boot him? Now, maybe he wants to leave on his own and he's tired of it. But, I mean, Kentucky is still dangerous, can still score. They don't guard anybody, but I don't know about Calipari. We'll see.
All right.
We'll see, but there you go.
Find Mr. Rives on Twitter X at Bucs Sideline Guy. College basketball coast to coast every Saturday night. We do a live show.
Yes.
He's doing a live show. He does some midweek stuff as well. College basketball coast to
Wherever
coast.
you get podcasts, college basketball coast to coast, we're going to be on it all the way through March, and you do a great job helping me out. Thank you for the plugs. I know you got a roll. Let's see what happens with the Super Bowl and everything else, brother.
Check out Bet US TV as well during the week as well. So, all right, folks, great chat. TJ Rives, enjoy the basketball, enjoy the Super Bowl. Don't eat too many chicken wings, and we will talk to you soon, sir.
Thank you. Great to be with you.